Hello and welcome to Just Onside. It's Sunday. It's a holy day for Christians. It's Easter Sunday, but for me and OS, it's podcast day. So, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Ayub. Very well. Sunday afternoon. A few more hours ahead of you on 3 hours now, instead of the regular four. But I'm doing good, thank you. Very well. How are things at your end?
All good, all good. It's been an interesting sort of week and a half, couple of weeks. From a Leeds United point of view, always put a smile on my face. So we're nearly there, but I ain't counting my chickens just yet.
It's been a good turnaround, hasn't it, Ayub? I mean, you were down in the dumps a couple of weeks ago, with a little bit of a slump in form that Leeds suffered, and it looked like for all the writing, that it seemed as though you were destined perhaps to finish in the playoffs, which would have been tough given that you've led for the most part, in terms of the season. But a great turnaround by Leeds, some great results. Sheffield United's drop in form helped, although they obviously won on Friday, I believe it was, alongside Burnley. It seems like Burnley and Leeds are in pole position. Leeds even more so. Big win, I think, away to Oxford, was it? Correct me
Mm.
if I'm mistaken. You must feel, you are the most negative person I know, but even you must be thinking, with the Burnley Sheffield United game on the horizon, that Leeds are pretty much there now.
uh, Being a Leeds fan, it's difficult to be uh, too optimistic. I mean, I am. I mean, at the end of the day, and there's only three games. I mean, that's the thing now. There's three games left. There's a 5 point difference. There's a huge goal difference as well, which is obviously, for its level points, it's like an extra point. So I'm pretty confident, without getting to a point where I'm going to start celebrating. I won't celebrate until it's absolutely a done deal, which it possibly could be tomorrow. I mean, the fact that Burnley are playing Sheffield United is a massive, massive boost to Leeds United. I think what the permutations are that if we win tomorrow, uh, and it's a draw, then we're up. If we draw and then Sheffield United get beat, which is highly likely, we'll be up. So it's in our hands. I mean, this is if we blow this, then really, I mean, I don't. I mean, I've got a feeling that I'll probably go over to Ellen Road and burn the stadium down. That's how angry I'd feel if that was to happen. But at the moment, I'm quietly confident that we've done enough. But I mean, this is more to do with. I mean, you talked about the turn in form for Leeds.
Mm,
Obviously, we've had three wins on the bounce. I mean,
yeah.
Friday was massive, and I'll give you the reason why I thought it was massive because we were playing last out of the three.
Mm,
Burnley did their job. I mean, it sort of they went a goal behind, but Burnley, as is their want, they sort of stayed in the game. They equalised, and then Watford just lost their heads. They got two men
correct.
sent
Yeah.
off. And it could have. I mean, there was I think the last kick of the game, almost. I mean, it was James Trafford who made a decent save, tiny save, and then Sheffield United played, and they played. I mean, it wasn't a great game, but they won. They did their job. So that was a real test for Leeds United against a reasonably informed Oxford side who's beaten Sheffield United in
Mm,
recent weeks,
mm.
but at the Kassam Stadium. So win so bad. We put in a really professional performance. Again, it was by the odd goal, which is always a concern for me. But we got over the line. It was a really, really good performance because the pressure must have been intense, knowing that the other two had won. So I was really, really pleased. And that perhaps gave me more confidence that really I think the mindset is probably right with these guys. Now, I mean, we've won three on the bounce. Sheffield obviously lost three on the bounce. They won again. So I'm pretty confident that we'll at least get a point tomorrow. But uh, I've said these things before, and it's hit me sort of between the eyes. So I don't want to get too carried away. I don't want to be too early, premature. But I think it's almost done. It's almost done. So I'm in
Yeah.
decent spirits.
Yeah, you are. It's quite visible and tangible on your face. I mean, I should talk of burning down grounds. We're not a podcast that condones any type of arson or criminal activity of any kind.
Especially in this day and age. I mean, I suppose it's a lot of things are taken literally. So maybe let's strike it from the record. Let's edit that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're obviously equally fond of our George, who's obviously a diehard Burnley supporter. So it would be perhaps nice and fitting the two guys that get on so well that you get promoted together as well. Although I'm sure if it was a case of one or the other, you'd be happy to sell George down the river. So no
Oh,
need
without a shadow of a
to.
doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. And George knows it.
George knows it indeed. But no, look, it's getting to the final, and I think Leeds have done the hard yards now. 3 games to go. You're both your rivals about to play one another as well, so that should obviously give you a big boost. You're there. I think you're pretty much there, done and dusted. Credit to the manager, credit to the players. Uh, Objective achieved. It would appear. Let's see. Perhaps only the next game will confirm that. So I'm happy for you. I just wanted to say I'm really happy for you.
That's very kind of you, and I'm delighted because you know how much Leeds United and their success sort of affects my sort of mindset. So it's absolutely crucial, and I could be. I mean, I'm planning on spending about 1,000 quid on taking people out for a meal.
Well, hang
I
on,
did
hang
it.
on. Let me get back. Let me get back first.
Remember last time when we got promoted, I'd sort of I was going to splash the cash, but it was COVID, so I ended up just giving them samosas.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
was,
you were there.
yeah, absolutely. I think you were the only one in the world who was appreciative of what COVID offered, because you and your loose
It
lips.
saved me a fortune.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Making promises that your wallet can't quite cash, unfortunately. But yeah, all good, all good.
Well, where things are going, it probably could be World War Three with what's happening with Israel, America, and Iran. So maybe that could spare me.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? All good stuff. Anyway, I'm
Right.
I'm really pleased for you.
All right. Okay. Well, how are you keeping it? How's the job in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, things are good. Settled in. It's been a couple of weeks now. You know how it is. It's always a little bit challenging when you start a new endeavor, especially in a foreign land, let's say. But obviously, I've been here 15 months, so the kind of personal transition's been one that you try and get by more and more. You're feeling more comfortable, let's say. But work-wise, it's always challenging getting up to speed and obviously looking to make a contribution. So yeah, it's going really well. Thank you for asking. The drive is a bit of a challenge. That does take some time, but hopefully, obviously, looking to move there in the summer. So that should ease things somewhat. But no, it's been good, and obviously this weekend we've had Dennis come round from Belgium as well. So I've been spending time with him. I've been a bit under the weather as well, so trying to manage that and get some hours of sleep. Some midweek back-to-back short nights, which I'm sure we'll get onto with our first subject. But yeah, bit under the weather. But Dennis is here, so spending a good amount of time here as well with him as well. So yeah, it's been good fun. Weather's starting to heat up quite literally. But yeah, doing really well. Thank you for asking.
All right. Okay. I suppose it coincides with your Arsenal. A nice little segue into the Arsenal. Incredible result. Absolutely incredible. I mean, a lot of people were sort of saying, "Oh, it's not a done deal," even though it was a three-goal lead. It's not a done deal, but it was in the end. And must be absolutely delighted and feeling pretty confident that it's not just a case of progressing to the next round, but you're probably looking now at potentially winning the Champions League. So, as an Arsenal fan, what are your thoughts? A, about the game against Madrid at the Bernabeu, and then in terms of potentially winning the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, just the game itself. You're right, there was an insane amount of perhaps irrational slash rational talk of Real Madrid making a comeback. Irrational in the sense that if it was anybody else, you'd say the game was done and dusted. But perhaps rational in the sense that it was Real Madrid. So they were the one team you could perhaps consider that might pull this out of the bag. Arsenal, I think, look, deserved win on the night. I would say in terms of the way they performed. I'm keen to hear what your thoughts were on the game as well. I'm sure you watched it from start to finish. But an incredible performance. It's what you need. You want to be relatively calm, poised, weather some early storms, and then obviously start to bring your attacking play. I always felt if Arsenal scored, uh, Madrid were going to find it hard to score four against this type of stubborn Arsenal setup because you know their MO generally, Ayub, is to defend and defend in numbers and keep it tight. So, but I think it's the kind of performance and the kind of result that lifts a club. It's one that'll live long in the memory. The night you went to the Bernabeu and won in the end, home and away, across the overall leg. I don't want to read too much into the whole, is this a turning point? Is this the moment Arsenal go? I don't believe in that. I simply just believe in hard work, good habits, consistency, doing the right things to win big games of football, and over time that should yield in consistent results and what have you. But you're right. I mean, I'm so happy for a lot of people, not least, most importantly for myself, the manager. You and I have had our ding dongs, let's say, on Mikel Arteta, but I've never wavered. He's an elite level coach. I believe he's turned this Arsenal team around. Yes, ultimately at the highest level, you're judged on what you win. I accept that. It's professional sports at the highest level. But there is scope for more commentary simply than just to see what's he won, and if he hasn't won, to see him out of a job. And that's the challenge that I had, perhaps, where you and I may well have parted ways. We'll discuss that at length. But yeah, incredible result for him. A big moment. He mentioned it was probably the biggest night of his career. He said his career, so I don't know if he meant playing and managerial, but let's just argue for the sake of it that it's probably the largest game, biggest game of his managerial career for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. It's the first time he stood on that touchline next to that manager, who's obviously a legend in world football as well, in probably the biggest theatre in world football as well, which is the Santiago Bernabeu. So, yeah, a fantastic performance, fantastic result. Some big performances, Ayub, I'm sure you'll agree. Declan Rice, I think over the course of two games, really starting to establish himself as a world-class footballer. I've been one of his biggest champions because of his attributes, but I think he's really shown that, not just with his
Mm,
goal contributions. I mean, I've started to minimize some of it by saying it's a set piece. Well, not many could do what he did with those two
mm,
set pieces, but also his overall player, his position, his strength, his power, his athleticism, his spirit, his kind of. I think he's the kind of footballer that I think other teams now see on the other side and think, it's going to be a tough day in midfield because he's got everything in terms of speed, power, and what have you. So incredible. And then Miles Lewis Skelly for me, 18 years of age. This player, if he keeps his feet on the ground, could go down and become a legend. I really do believe that, not just for club, but I believe for country as well. For someone so young, so much strength, his dribbling, his ability to retain the ball in tight spaces, very rarely gets caught on it, although he got caught on it once late. But he's so calm for someone his age. And again, if he keeps his feet on the ground, he's got a good family, very close to his mother and what have you. You'd think he's only going to go from strength to strength. I think Ayub, albeit Partey is suspended for the first leg, which is huge, an unnecessary yellow card. I think it was the 81st, 82nd minute when the game was by and large done. You saw Declan Rice's reaction to that yellow card, telling him to get his head right. That's a blow because I think that's the team he would like to have fielded in both legs, irrespective of any outside noise about Havertz coming back. I don't think he's back for both semi-final legs. I think this is the team he'd like to play, home and away against PSG. He won't be able to do that, which is then going to cause other kind of repercussions within the team, multiple changes. But you're right, a deserved win for Arsenal just in terms of the game itself. For you, I don't think anyone could dispute that over the course of
mm,
two legs. I'm glad they got the win as well away because it just puts a bit of a cherry on the cake. In terms of their hopes for the tournament, just very quickly, you look, it's the final four. You're in with a chance. I've never wavered from the fact that Arsenal are a very good team. I always felt, and I think I mentioned it to a few colleagues, I think we mentioned it to you, that Saka was always going to be back around the quarterfinal stage, and I thought that could be critical. Had a tough moment early on, but then an incredible finish to somewhat settle the game. Although they obviously conceded straight away, but big performance from him, and they'll fancy it. You, they will fancy it. I think it's going to require a great deal of concentration against a team that I know you're very fond of. I think we both agreed they're a team on the up. They've obviously settled everything domestically. Uh, they're a new team. They're a fresh team. They play to win. They play to score. They're a fun team to watch, actually, objectively speaking, which I think is credit to the manager and just everything that they've done in recent times, albeit in amongst a little bit of turmoil as well. So, yeah, a huge opportunity for Arsenal. They've beaten them obviously already, although this is now a very different PSG team, full of confidence, full of beans, as you would say. I think it's there for Arsenal. I think if they concentrate, if they put a premium on conceding goals. This Arsenal team, in terms of offensively now, in terms of a bit more chemistry, Marino's getting a bit more settled to what is a new position for him. PSG can concede. We've seen that. They
Mm,
look vulnerable. They look vulnerable for large parts against Liverpool in that second half, I thought, at Anfield. Uh, Villa nearly turned that around in the second half. I mean, I woke up, it was 2-0 at Villa Park. I thought, well, that's done and dusted. There was no way I could watch the game given the time, knowing that I was going to watch the Real Arsenal game the day after. And then I woke up to find out it was 3-2 with about 35 minutes to play. Watch the extended highlights. I mean, incredible. Villa really,
mm.
really could and should have probably turned that around with the chances that they had. So, listen, they concede, but they look bloody good, as you would say, going forward as well. Very lively. They're a team that looks to win home and away. So I think there should be an incredible affair. But for Arsenal, your opportunity knocks, as we say. And Arsenal are not yet a Real Madrid. They're not yet maybe a Man City or a Liverpool where their reputation is such that you think pencil them in for more semi-finals. This is the first time they've gotten here since a long, 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 long time. I think it's 20 years. I think it would have been the time when they got to the final. I think in 2006, I want to say. So it's been nearly 20 years. Um, Huge opportunity to get through and then face an Inter Barcelona. At this stage, for me as a fan, you very quickly. Um, Normally, you're calm and rational because these things seem so far away. Yet now, when you get to the semi-final, you get to the point where you think, if we don't get to the final, I don't think I want to watch it, just because it seems so close and it just seems so difficult to get to this point. And it is the case. It feels difficult to get to this point where you're constantly knocking for these big, big, big competitions. So credit to Arsenal, credit to Mikel Arteta. I think he deserved that night. Arsenal deserved that night in terms of what they've put forward, I think, over the last 24, 36 months. I think now it's just a case of seizing that opportunity and hopefully putting two big monstrous performances in again to come away with that. I'm convinced that if they defend like they can, then I think they can win. Yes, absolutely. I think they can win. The key thing will be, can PSG consistently cut through Arsenal like they have through other teams? Can they consistently cut through this Arsenal team? And if they can, it should be an incredibly watchable affair for the neutral. But yeah, Arsenal deserved winners. And right now, they've got a huge opportunity to etch their name in history.
I'd actually say they're the favourites. I seriously would. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago, saying that they're perhaps better equipped to deal with European football. I mean, the Premier League is tough. I mean, it is a very tough league, and obviously they compete for the Premier League as well. I mean, this year perhaps has been quite a disappointing year, but certainly for Champions League, it is. I mean, there's lots of attrition involved, and it's a two-legged affair always. So therefore, there is always a lot of thought, and tactically, you've got to be really astute. And I think you always, I mean, you sing praises of Arteta, and I think I do. I mean, I criticize Arteta for not winning things, but ultimately I do respect Arteta. I think he's a fine coach. I think he's an outstanding coach. And this is perhaps what he needs. He just needs to cement his place as a great coach. He needs to win trophies. What better trophy than Champions League? I genuinely think that they are the favourites. I think they've got the perfect game. They've got the perfect characters. And we talked about Rice, or you talked about Rice. He's exactly the type of player that you need. I always sort of say that you need leaders. He's a football man. I mean, you saw a documentary once, or a piece that Declan Rice did, and has pictures of all these great midfield players. He's a student of the game. Football comes first and foremost, and he is a leader. I think now he's got to that position where I think he's one of the leaders at Arsenal. Almost, it reminds me of the time at Chelsea when they had leaders, Frankie Lampard, John Terry, Drogba. These characters you need when you win things, or if you are going to win things, you need these types of characters. And I think Declan Rice is one of these types of characters. I think he's a very smart guy. He's a very intelligent guy. He's a very good footballer. He knows exactly how to maximize the ability that he has. I think Arsenal have got the game. They've got some players missing, absolutely crucial players missing. But I just think PSG are their game is playing on the front foot. When you play against the Arsenal, I mean, you know better than anybody. Arsenal are a very, very good side. And I think PSG, they'll huff, they'll puff, they'll find it difficult to break the Arsenal down. What their weakness is keeping goals out. And I think that's where their problems will be. I think they'll find it difficult to score. They will score, but they'll find it difficult to score. But it's a case of can they keep clean sheets or can they keep it down? No, they can't. Uh, Arsenal will be cock a hoop if you can turn over Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. Then there's no other team that you really should fear. But talking about, and I'm just going to briefly talk about Real Madrid. Uh, I've got mixed opinions about Mbappe. Mbappe has been obviously a player that he does get you on the edge of the seat. You look at his stats; he's a phenomenal goal scorer. But I just talked about Declan Rice being about a football man, being about a leader. He's a team man as well, Declan Rice. He comes across as somebody who the it's the he's more concerned about contributing to a successful team rather than just being an individual star. Mbappe is completely the opposite. At least he appears to be completely the opposite to that. It's about Mbappe. I mean, I think he stumped the joint out at PSG. It was all about him. I've got a feeling that there's an element of that there as well. These are the games that you want your big players to make their mark. I don't know. I don't think he turned up. I don't think he turned up. And this is the problem, I think, with characters like that, that they'll have phenomenal records, but when you need them to show up, sometimes they don't. So, I mean, what were your thoughts on that? I mean, in
Yeah,
terms of Real Madrid.
I think you touch on actually something quite interesting that I think about with sport in general, you, which is that you're talking about the talents. I mean, all footballers have talent. Then there's varying elements of talent. What you're talking about is perhaps that intangibles that you need to arrest a situation or to arrive at or kind of lift your team, so to speak, just by your sheer presence, whether it's verbal, whether it's performance, whatever it may be, in a sense, recognizing the moment where you think, this may not be quite our night. But for example, at Emirates, when you realize Arsenal were in the ascendancy in the second half, to somehow either sit in and maybe say, okay, today's a nil-nil type of game. Let's see this out and what have you. Now, Arsenal scored a couple of set pieces, but actually they were in the ascendancy somewhat. They should have probably scored from open play. So they were probably worthy of their win in the end and the degree of win. But you're talking about that kind of recognizing situations, recognizing where, okay, today's a game we have to play, today's a game we have to dig in. Right, maybe I'm not at it, but I've got to make sure my teammates are at it. That type of leader. And you're right, Rice is that. Now, you've heard him speak. I think the piece that you were alluding to, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it's Yaya Toure he also spends a bit of time with. But Rice always, he's a good listen. He comes
Mhm.
across a very nice lad, if I can say, in the interviews, kind of very open, very honest. But he gives it everything on that football
Mm.
pitch. He plays fair. He's not a dirty player, but he's a strong player. He runs. He's got decent technical ability, can pass, can dominate the game. He's at the peak of his athletic powers. You can see that in terms of the way he's getting up the pitch. But Mbappe, yeah, I think listen, I think it's a fair argument. I think the only thing I would say about PSG without understanding the stories too much is sometimes it's not even in a sense your personality that can cause that. I think just by the sheer weight of your character, let's say, you can sometimes take up the oxygen in the room. And perhaps by default, you got to remember he spent quite a few years there with Neymar, was another big iconic footballing figure.
Mm.
That can sometimes just involuntarily, subconsciously mean the others just take their natural place in the dressing room, which is to be a little bit more timid and a little bit more kind of deferential, shall we say? So I think perhaps it's not just a conscious. Let's say he was the biggest ego, for example. I think that's what perhaps you're alluding to. It can just happen naturally. I mean, this just happens because he's such an iconic footballer who's punctuated his impact on the biggest games. Let's not forget World Cup finals and the rest of it. But you're right. I mean, in the first game when Arsenal were in the ascendancy, that was a time to just nail it down, and you want some leaders and say, look, listen, today might be we lose 1-0. Let's take it to the Bernabeu and let's arrest it. They let that game get away from them, even after the two set pieces. So I think it's a fair shout. It's something that will be leveled at him. If he thought the scrutiny at Paris was strong, then Real is another few notches above that without a shadow of a doubt. So there will be scrutiny. You saw some of the scrutiny that's come on Carlo Ancelotti, bless him, immediately after
Mm.
the game. He will not be there next year. Obviously, Mbappe will be, but they'll do some maneuverings in the transfer window in the summer. But you're right, Mbappe is going to have to lead that team to a Champions League triumph. To get his own monkey off the back that he's not won the Champions League. But when you go to Real, that's the barometer of success:
Mm.
Champions Leagues and La Liga titles and the rest of it. So I think it's a fair point. Again, you said Arsenal favourites. I think Barca obviously look really dominant. A huge win for them. 98th minute penalty from Rafinha, your guy Rafinha again, who's
Mm.
laying the impact. Barcelona again yesterday when they were losing 3-1. Inter had a big result against Bayern. Simone Inzaghi's done a great job. Got to the final with um, Inter against City. You'll remember they acquitted themselves very well in that final as well. I think they're top of the Serie A again, another semi-final. So you've got to give huge credit to Inter Milan and that manager. So yeah, look, you're in there. You're in there. You've got a shot. Uh, there's no Real, there's no City, there's no Liverpool. These are no Bayern. These are the perennial, let's say, teams. But yeah, you've still got three heavyweights of European football with PSG, Barca, and Inter. So time will tell. But I agree with you. The opportunity's there. I think Arsenal can mix it. Can mix it with those
Mm.
three. I don't think they're not a plucky underdog in any way, shape, or form. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they can somehow get through the two games. And I don't want to bring Leeds into it too much, but it's a bit like the Oxford United result. You're just thinking, get the win any which way. We're in the final knockings. It doesn't matter if you play poorly, even if it's a 1-0 narrow win, which is not good for the old ticker. But fine, just get the win and get it over the line. I think the semi-finals are about that. Just get over the
Mm.
line, get to that final, and then of course finals are similar. It's just about getting your name or hands on that trophy. So, yeah, great result. Really happy for the club, happy for the players, happy for the manager. This has been a long time coming, and they deserve to be in this position. But now they've got to somehow see it home.
Exciting time for the Gooners. And my pal Richard Farrell in London as well. If he's watching, hello, Richard, and I'm sure you're in a good mood. Right, let's talk about the Premier League. We talked, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago about, or at least I certainly started by saying it's probably the poorest league in terms of competition. But I have reflected on it, and my thought is it's perhaps because it's the strongest league in terms of ability now. I mean, you look at it from the point of view that the three teams that came up have fallen woefully short, which again indicates how strong the Premier League is. Now, we've not had, apart from Liverpool to a certain extent, who've been run away, but it's certainly the rest of the pack has bunched up quite tightly. I mean, there's not much between. I mean, even a Man City now, with what's happened with Man City, there's no difference between Man City and perhaps some team which is 10th, 11th. So apart from Liverpool, it's a very congested league. But I would sort of say that it's got better and better in terms of overall ability. We used to have maybe almost three segments to the league. We had the top four or five, then we had a middle bit, and then we had the bottom, the perennial relegation survivors. Now it's a case of whichever teams come up, they'll probably be favourites to go down. So it's not even a case of they'll be in the relegation mix. It will just be the three teams that come up that will most likely go down again. So I would almost counter and say that the Premier League has never been stronger in its entirety. Uh, Maybe next year, perhaps, we might see other teams. We've seen Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. Next year, we might see maybe Crystal Palace sort of break into that top four or five. So that to me is a reflection of how strong the league is. So at least that's my point of view. What's your thoughts on the league? It's certainly from just before you start. It's been disappointing because it's not been a spectacle. It, it's not because the league is weak. It's almost the opposite.
Yeah, some great points, Ayub, and I thought you perfect articulated it perfectly. Sometimes what happens with these discussions, you're right, and this is why I thought you really laid it out really well, is you end up answering a very different question. The question you've posed is there's different layers to this. In terms of the season as a spectacle, so let's remove our Leeds hats, our Arsenal hats. If we were just football lovers with no skin in the game, let's say, you'd say it's been a disappointing season because if you're a neutral, you simply want entertainment, you want stories, you want jeopardy, you want risk, you want uncertainty, you want drama, you want fallouts in terms of a team potentially winning and then losing and what that means as a ramification, as a consequence, because other teams are taking advantage and now they're above them. So there's storylines being generated off the back of that. In terms of that type of season, if you're answering that specific question, it's been a very poor season. Liverpool have been stronger than any other team by a million miles. they wrapped up this league many moons ago, as I've shared many, many times. It was never a title race. I have very clear guidelines or definitions about what is a title race. You've got to be within 5 points with 5 games to go. And if you do that, then that's a title race. So we did not have a title race in this season. It looks like, even if I'm being kind to the bottom three, Ipswich, Southampton, and Leicester, it would appear that 26, 27 points would have been enough to get you safety. And I'm being kind to Ipswich, which I am because they play Arsenal. But in case they pick up some points, you'd still think 26, 27 might well be enough to have stayed up. I mean, the Wolves, I mean, the relegation spots are done, let's be very clear. But I'm just saying, like, they probably the maximum Ipswich may well end up with is about 34, 35, 24,
Mm.
25 points. So, from a risk and jeopardy perspective, we've not had any. Things have been very well established very quickly. But you made an interesting point. And just before I go on to that, just to be very clear, that's no through no fault of Liverpool. They've set the standard, and it's up to the Arsenals, the Chelseas, the Man Cities, the Newcastles, the Aston Villas to get up to that standard. So when people end up answering the different question, it's as though it's a stick to beat Liverpool with, which I never understand.
Mm.
They've set a standard, which is they don't lose many, they win a ton of games, they score a lot of goals, and therefore in the league, they're going to win the league deservedly so. It's up to the others to come up to that standard and meet them there. So I don't see that as a stick to beat Liverpool with. What I would say, however, is to come back to your conclusion, which is I think you're absolutely right. The some of the other teams, and perhaps this season, especially with City and historically Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea have struggled over the last couple of years,
Mm.
but City, especially, they've perhaps regressed to that kind of second tier a little bit to some extent. At least this season they have. And what you mean is, you're talking about that cluster of clubs. So Liverpool in a class of their own. Arsenal, are perhaps most observers would say, are the second best team in the league. And then there's this kind of cluster of teams where you'd say it's all much of a muchness to some
Mm.
extent, where you'd say on any given day you could see you wouldn't be surprised if either of them beat the other team. So,
Mm.
I mean, credit to City, they've just started to put a few results together somewhat, and it looks like the Champions League spots will be secured. But you're right, there's been a bit of not a bit, a clear improvement when it comes to your Newcastle United, so your Aston Villas, even Brighton to some extent. Fulham, I think have been great and what have you. Bournemouth, although they've had some slippage, Forest obviously made a huge jump this year. So I think when you look at it, you're right. There's a plethora of clubs that there's this kind of middle tier, and you're right. Previously, there used to be three tiers where you had the historical top four, which used to be, I guess, well, in the good old days, it probably was United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, and then obviously Man City. In recent times, it's just been City and Liverpool, and now recently it's been City and Arsenal, and now Liverpool have come to the fore again. But now it seems like there's perhaps maybe four, maybe five tiers in the clubs, and then you've got some anomalies. United, Spurs languishing in the bottom half of the table. So what it tells me a little bit is that in some ways, and I think you mentioned about Palace, you're never sometimes too far away from making a big jump. And equally, you're perhaps not too far away from having a few poor decisions away from being perhaps bottom half of the table, let's say, as United have seen in recent years, where if you don't quite get the managerial appointment right, you don't quite get some of the off the field stuff right, signings, recruitment, as Roy Keane often always speaks about, you can fall. And that's to your point, which is that there's other clubs just willing to take advantage very quickly because the gap's not huge. So if you make one bad decision, let's say if you decide to buy a player on the right wing and you persevere with him for one season, he doesn't kind of pull up any magic, so to speak. He's going to influence results, and therefore you're going to probably slip down the table. So there's that kind of critical mass of teams, perhaps, where if you make one or two bad decisions, or you fire a manager too early, or whatever it may be, or hang on to a manager too long in some cases, you are going to perhaps drop down the table. So I'm with you. I think the standard of football, I mean, we'll talk about it another day about, we spoke once about, how much freedom are players given to express themselves on the pitch. I think that's a very different conversation about some of the entertainment value of football nowadays with some clubs. I think that's one we'll tackle for another day. But in terms of the kind of standard, I'm with you. I think there's more clubs that you think could make a jump. I mean, next year, if I said to you right now who's going to finish top four next year, you'd say, well, I think Liverpool are probably going to be there, Arsenal. And then you'd say, I don't know. Could Newcastle take another jump? Will Spurs rebound? I mean, there's so many things. I mean, Chelsea, they're a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde type of team sometimes. So I'm with you. I'm in agreement with you. I think generally on the whole, the season in itself, entertainment wise, from a Jeopardy perspective, has been next to nothing. I think we've pretty much known who's going to finish. I mean, if you want to count Champions League spots as some sort of entertainment factor, so be it. I've never seen the top four races anything other than just
Mm.
an over dramatized narrative pushed by the media to define an extra storyline. I just don't think it's all that interesting, really. But I think you're right in terms of the standard, especially with some clubs taking jumps and leaps forward, or Aston Villa being a kick away from a semi-final of a Champions League spot and what have you. And that's because of coaches and elite level coaches coming to the league and what have you. I think you're right. I think this season, I think the teams are slightly better balanced, with obviously clearly one outlier, which is Liverpool setting the standard. So yeah, for the most part, I would agree with you.
And it's going to be interesting for next season. I mean, obviously, you've alluded to the points of what's going to happen next season in terms of some of the teams like Chelsea, because I mean, there are. I mean, it is now. We've got to that point now. I think up until I think this season, it was always the usual suspects. It was quite predictable in a sense. But I mean, I must confess, I mean, it's not something that is going to enhance the product. I mean, the Premier League is always referred to as the best show in town. Now, uh, I think uh, Sky and all the people who obviously invest in the Premier League have got to start thinking about, right, how do we market this? Because in a sense, Sky especially, they're they are the kings of over dramatization,
Mm.
and even they found it difficult
Yep.
to dramatize what's been happening, because in a sense it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, with the
Correct.
relegation, I mean, this is why the championship, albeit it's a league that everybody wants to get out of, or at least some of the teams want to get out of, it is the most exciting league in world football. There is not, I mean, I think, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but yesterday or a few days ago, somebody put up this little article saying that every team, all 24 teams in the championship, had the were still involved in either a promotion battle or a relegation battle. So every single team, as of 3 or 4 days ago, I mean, we're into game week 42, 43, but it just shows how tight that league is, how there's not much difference. I mean, we played against Oxford, the beat us, or we beat them 1-0. I mean, Plymouth beat Sheffield United. I mean, it was virtually top playing the bottom, and there wasn't much difference in there. So it's not a great there's not much great ability in the league, and it's damn exciting. But the Premier League is completely different, where it's the opposite, where it's so highly skilled,
Yep.
but it's not a spectacle at all. So it's a strange one. It's a strange time that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you a question about the championship very quickly. Just before I get onto that, you're right about the championship. I think the only thing I would say is I think there's some key reasons for this. One, there's four more clubs in the league, so there's more scope perhaps for a certain tightness when it comes to points and what have you. You're right. All season long, it's been who out of the top three is going to get promoted, because there's only two automatic spots, and that's been a storyline that's persevered all the way till the final knockings. I mean, these three separated themselves relatively early on. And then it's always been the standards that these three clubs have set, where a few mistakes here and there is going to lead to one of these clubs, looks for the time being Sheffield United, being in that third position. The only thing, and it's a separate topic, that I don't like about the championship is, and I'm big on fairness and integrity of competitions and things, I just don't understand why a third place team and a sixth place team should have the same equal chances of getting through, in a sense, to a final and getting through, especially when over the course of 46 games, there's sometimes a disparity of between 15 to 20 points, if not more, between the positions. I just think it should be tiered in a way where perhaps the third place team should be in the playoff final. And then the others play one another to get to a certain. I'm not saying I have the exact answer. I mean, I can think of one in terms of when I put my mind to it, but I just think they should be tiered in a way that should give the third place team some advantage to get through, right? Whereas it just starts as a new competition once the playoff starts, which I just don't think is fair, because 46 games for me is a long enough time to establish who the three best clubs are in the league. It's 46 games. You know, you're really taking out a lot of bad luck and what have you with that. Anyway, that's aside from it. I want to ask you a very quick question. You mentioned right at the start about the three promoted clubs getting relegated. Do you think that next year, let's assume for the sake of this argument that the three best clubs in the Championship, which are Leeds, Sheffield United, and Burnley, get through to the Premiership next year? Would it be your belief that you'd be quite surprised? I mean, I know you'll never say this about Leeds, but would you be quite surprised if those three clubs are not the ones that are relegated next season?
The way things are, I have no doubt that we will be in the bottom three. There has to be some exceptional circumstances because at the moment the gulf between all three and Wolves is huge, it's immense. And Wolves will only be slightly stronger next season. That's the way that I'm looking at it. So the weakest team in the Premier League currently is Wolves. And the gulf between that team and all the three teams that perhaps will be promoted is huge. Now, obviously, there's going to be investment. So all of these three teams, in theory, will improve, but nowhere near sufficiently enough. I mean, we're talking about Wolves who've been in the Premier League for, I can't remember when they were last out of the Premier League. So even a poor Premier League team is far superior. So I just think it's difficult. I mean, it's a topic we've touched upon before. What do they need to do? So, I mean, maybe this is when it is confirmed, maybe we can do a little piece on that. And I can offer my suggestions as to how we can try and stay in the league. But at the moment, it's great. It's really exciting. Get to the Premier League. But the reality is, the high probability is it's probably 90%, 95% that we'll come down again or we'll be in the bottom three.
Yeah, what I'm interested to see is whether or not different clubs take different approaches from now on, because you're right, these investors and Leeds have big investors from the 49ers group and what have you. And I wonder whether or not they will also come into it and approach it a very different way to your point, which is it normally the status quo is you build on your team with a few good signings, a bit of experience, and what have you, Premier League experience. That used to be the good old way of doing things, and then you struggle, and you hope some of your leaders and experienced Premiership players who are perhaps at the back end of their careers can just give you enough leadership and points to get you to 15th, 16th, or 17th. I think that used to be the tried and tested method in the good old days. I wonder whether with now new ownership groups, you mentioned previously about what Luton's approach was, rightly or wrongly, but you mentioned as though they just kind of accepted their fate and thought, let's set ourselves up, use this money and income that we're going to get from our one season in the league to then set us up for when we do then come back up into the league for sustained success. I'm just very intrigued to see if Burnley, who again have owners from foreign shores as well, whether they just approach it differently this year, whether it's, to your point, a ruthless approach when it comes to the manager or the coach, or whether they make absolute wholesale changes to the playing squad, which sometimes seems a bit unfair because these are the players that have got you to the promised land. So there's a certain sense of loyalty that I think even you as a fan does appreciate that they've punched their ticket to the big time. Let's at least keep some of them around to then obviously play some of these games, of course. But it's interesting, like I said, to see how they will try and circumvent that gap or bridge that gap to Wolves that you mentioned. And I'm in agreement with you, by the way. I think there is a gap between these clubs and established clubs like Wolves. So, yeah, I'm interested to see the approaches in the summer and whether or not they go a very different way or whether they do it through minor surgery or major surgery to try and keep themselves in the league. Because one thing's for sure, Leeds, Burnley, and Sheffield United have had enough relative recent experience of the Premier League where it won't be a Luton Town approach. It'll be a case of let's stay up the first season and then let's kick on because we want to really establish ourselves as maybe like a Brentford or what have you, or a Brighton that are now never seen as potential relegation fodder. So, yeah, interesting to see the approaches in the summer.
Yeah, yeah. I'm as I said, I mean, I'm not sort of getting too ahead of myself, but uh, if we do go up, and obviously there's a high probability that we will, it will be extremely curious just to find out how they do that. Now, for me, I'm somebody that in normal life, I'm somebody that sort of believes in compassion, humanity, being fair, being just. In sports, it's completely different. In sport, I'm somebody ruthless. You have an objective, and tough decisions have to be made. In real life, I'm completely different. In normal life, I'm all for compassion, perhaps almost to a disadvantage, giving somebody a chance. But in sport, and that's why, I mean, we talked about, I mean, this is something we've touched upon a number of times. Iriola at Bournemouth, fantastic decision. And that's the sort of decision making I hope Leeds United make, that they think about the reality. And I think you're right about the first season. The objective should be just finishing a place above, at least. That should be the KPI. Let's finish above the three relegation places. But it's easier said than done. It's a tough, tough ask, because if you are looking at Wolves as a benchmark, my goodness me, you're going to have to make some serious uh, I was going to say investment, but I don't think it's just serious investment. I think the problem is with some clubs that they just splash the cash, and that's not always the right way. I mean, we'll perhaps talk more in detail
Mm.
in a future episode if Leeds come up, but I certainly always say that, right, it should be Premier League players with Premier League experience, because that first season, you've got to know the league. You can have the best player in a European league. The Premier League sometimes takes time to adapt. So I'd be looking at players that have played in the Premier League, have got the character, the mindset, have got the steel. I mean, I was just reading about Scott McTominay. He's the type of player. Now, obviously, he's gone to Italy, doing fantastically well. But he's the type of player that I would have gone for. That type of character, somebody who's he doesn't pull up any trees. He's doing that in Italy, but he didn't pull up any trees. He was always a good, solid pro, in my opinion. That's the type of character I'd be looking at. Uh, but we can discuss it
Yeah,
at a later time.
we can. The very quick response to that is the challenge you've got there. You basically, if it's Premier League players with Premier League experiences, they're not
Yeah,
often going to command the type of Premier League salaries that these small clubs just aren't willing to go to. So yeah, that's the challenge.
yeah. All right. Okay. So that's for another day. Hopefully, uh, the next show I'll be in a buoyant mood, because we will be in the Premier League, we will be in the Promised Land, and maybe I can start talking about, right, what Leeds should do. But until then, I ain't gonna say anything. My lips are sealed. So as always, thank you so much. Hopefully you can enjoy the rest of the Sunday. It's a beautiful, gorgeous 17 degrees here in Blackburn. So I might pop out, might toast the old bonds, get a bit of sun on it, get some colour on it. But until the next time, thank you as always for watching the show. If you can, put your predictions in. Who do you think is going to win the Champions League? Is it going to be Arsenal, or maybe is it going to be PSG, or maybe Inter? So put your comments in there. Smash a like. Do us a solid. Put a like on this episode. And until the next time, hopefully the next episode I'll have a lead shirt on, because we'll have gone up. All right. So as always, enjoy. We'll see you soon. Ta-da for now.